This is the story of how a single curse, born from one man's unbreakable will, annihilated a noble house more thoroughly than any dragon's fire. It is the chief tragedy of the First Age of Middle-earth, a testament to the fact that the most potent weapon of the first Dark Lord was not his armies of orcs or his beasts of fire, but his words. The ruin of the Children of Húrin makes the doom of Oedipus, or the fall of the house of Atreus, seem like a brief, passing sorrow. It is a tragedy engineered on a cosmic scale, a precise and personal revenge enacted by a god against a mortal who dared to defy him. The tale begins, as so many tales of sorrow do, in the ruin of a great hope. The battle was the Niënor, the battle of unnumbered tears. It was the fifth great battle for Beleriand, and it was a catastrophic defeat for the alliance of elves and men. In the final, desperate hours of the conflict, as the hosts of Morgoth swept the field, the rearguard of the men of the House of Hador stood firm, shielding the retreat of the elven king Turgon. Their lord was Húrin the Steadfast, mightiest of the warriors of men. With his brother Huor, he held the line at the stream of Rivell, creating a wall of corpses that held back the tide of Angband. Huor fell, an arrow piercing his eye, but Húrin fought on. He cast aside his shield and wielded his great axe two-handed, and with every stroke he cried, "Ore Entuluva! The day shall come again!" 70 times he uttered that cry, but at last he was taken. The orcs piled upon him, grappling him, even as he hewed their limbs. He was buried beneath their numbers, and dragged in chains before Morgoth. The Dark Lord knew he had captured a great prize. Húrin was not only a renowned captain, but he was also a friend to Turgon, king of the hidden city of Gondolin. The location of Gondolin was the one secret Morgoth craved above all others, the last great elven kingdom that had defied his sight. He offered Húrin freedom and great power if he would but reveal the secret of Turgon's stronghold. Húrin laughed in his face. He mocked the Dark Lord, naming him Morgoth, the black foe of the world, a name he despised. This defiance sealed not his own fate, but the fate of all he loved. For Morgoth was a Vala, a divine power, and his malice was patient and infinitely cruel. He would not grant Húrin the release of a quick death. Instead, he devised a torment of the spirit. He pronounced his curse. It was not a spell of simple pain or misfortune. It was a twisting of fate itself. "Upon all whom you love," the Dark Lord said, his voice a chilling echo in the vast hall, "my thought shall weigh as a cloud of doom, and it shall bring them down into darkness and despair. Wherever they go, evil shall arise. Whenever they speak, their words shall bring ill counsel. Whatsoever they do shall turn against them. They shall die without hope, cursing both life and death." And to make the torment absolute, Morgoth took Húrin and chained him to a stone chair high upon the peaks of the Thangorodrim, the mountains above his fortress. From there, by Morgoth's power, Húrin was forced to see and hear the unfolding of this doom upon his family, his vision clouded by the lies and malice of his captor. He would be a helpless spectator to the ruin he had brought upon his own bloodline. But how does a curse, a mere utterance of words, cross vast lands to destroy a single family? For Morgoth, it was a matter of turning their own virtues against them. The pride of the House of Hador, their courage, their love, all would become instruments of their own destruction. The curse began its work in the land of Dorlomin, Húrin's home. With its lord gone, the land was overrun by the treacherous Easterlings, men who had served Morgoth. Húrin's wife, the lady Morwen Eledwen, lived as a virtual prisoner in her own house. She was proud and unbending, refusing to flee, for she ever hoped for her husband's return, and she was now with child. Her son was Túrin, a boy with his mother's dark hair and fair skin, but with his father's gray eyes and grim mood. He grew in a world of shadow and fear, hearing the whispers of his father's fate, feeling the weight of a doom he could not comprehend. His childhood was not one of light. For a brief time there was a glimmer of joy. His sister was born, and they named her Lalaith, which means laughter. She was a golden-haired child, as bright as an elven maid, and for 3 years her presence brought a fragile light to their house. But the curse was watching. Morgoth sent a pestilence from the ruins of Angband, an evil wind that carried sickness. Both children fell ill. Túrin, strong and resilient, fought through the fever. Lalaith did not. The death of his sister extinguished the last light in Túrin's childhood. He became silent, withdrawn, and the grief hardened into a cold anger within him. Morwen, seeing this darkness in her son and fearing for his safety among the Easterlings who saw him as the heir of their enemy, made a desperate choice. She would send him away. She sent 2 trusted servants to guide him on the perilous journey to the hidden elven kingdom of Doriath, ruled by King Thingol and Queen Melian, where she hoped he would find safety and be raised in honor. Her second child, the one she carried, would be born after he had gone. In sending her son to safety, Morwen had unknowingly placed him on the exact path his enemy desired. But would the light of the elves be enough to dispel a shadow cast by a god? Túrin was received with great honor in Doriath. King Thingol, remembering the valor of Húrin, took the boy as his foster son. For 9 years, Túrin grew among the elves, learning their lore and their skills in arms. He became strong and tall, handsome but for the shadow in his eyes that never left him. He was beloved by many, especially by the great March Warden Beleg Cuthalion, the finest archer of that age, who became his teacher and closest friend. Yet he was never truly at peace. He was a mortal man among an immortal people, and the weight of his family's fate, the unknown fate of his father and mother, pressed upon him. He was proud, quick to take offense, and slow to forget a slight. He felt the sting of being a homeless exile, dependent on the charity of a king, however kind. He wore the dragon helm of Dorlomin, a fearsome heirloom of his house, and went to the northern marches of the kingdom to fight orcs, seeking an outlet for the fire and anger in his heart. He won great renown, but the darkness within him only deepened. He wore the favor of a king and the friendship of the greatest elven warriors. So why did the darkness in his heart only deepen? Because the curse fed not on his misfortune, but on his pride, and his pride was soon to be his undoing. The catalyst was an elf of the royal council named Sayeros. Jealous of the favor shown to Túrin, he taunted the young man one evening at the king's table. He mocked his rough, mortal manners and made a cruel jest about the women of his homeland, insinuating that they ran about as wild as deer. The insult to his mother, Morwen, was more than Túrin's pride could bear. Enraged, he hurled a drinking goblet at Sayeros, wounding him, and drew his sword. A brawl was averted. But Túrin's anger was not sated. The next day he ambushed Sayeros as he walked in the woods, stripped him naked, and forced him to run like a deer back towards the city. In his terror, Sayeros tried to leap a chasm, but he slipped and fell to his death upon the rocks below. Mablung, an elf lord who witnessed the end of the chase, urged Túrin to return to the city and seek the king's pardon. But Túrin, believing he was now a condemned outlaw, refused. His pride and his despair told him there was no justice for him here. He was doomed. Without a word, he turned his back on the kingdom of Doriath and fled into the wild. Back in Menegroth, King Thingol investigated the matter. Beleg Strongbow spoke passionately in Túrin's defense, explaining the provocation. Thingol, wise and just, ruled that Sayeros had received his due and that Túrin was pardoned. He sent Beleg to search for his foster son and bring him back with honor. But Túrin was already gone, swallowed by the wilderness. He had fled from judgment, not knowing it would have been merciful. The curse had used his own fiery temper to sever him from his greatest allies and his only safe haven. He now wandered alone, his heart bitter with perceived injustice. He was now an outlaw, a nameless man in the wilderness. Could he escape his identity, or was he simply shedding a skin, only to reveal the true target of Morgoth's hatred beneath? After a time of lonely hardship, he fell in with a band of outlaws, grim and desperate men who lived by plunder in the lands south of the river Tiglan. To them he gave a new name, Niënor, the Wronged. He kept his true lineage and his past a secret. His skill with a sword quickly earned him a place among them, and his grim demeanor and prowess in battle soon made him their leader. He tried to impose some measure of order upon them, forbidding them from harming the common folk of the woods, and turning their blades only against the orcs that now roamed freely. But he was leading a band of broken men in a broken land, and the shadow that followed him was long. He had cast off the name Túrin, son of Húrin, and become a captain of brigands. From his throne of torment, Húrin watched his son fall from the fosterling of a king into a leader of outcasts, and despaired. Morgoth's design was proceeding flawlessly. But fate, or perhaps a power beyond even Avala's malice, had not yet played its final hand. While Túrin carved out a grim existence in the wilderness, his truest friend had not forgotten him. Beleg Strongbow searched for Túrin for over a year, a lone elf tracking a ghost through a land crawling with enemies. He followed cold trails and whispers of a new outlaw captain called Niënor, the Wronged Hand. He found the aftermath of their raids, orcs slain with uncanny skill, and knew he was on the right path. But what kind of man was he searching for now? A wronged hero? Or a fallen lord who had embraced the darkness? This question haunted Beleg, but it did not slow his feet. Back with Túrin's company, life was hard. The men were rough, and while they feared and respected their captain, they grumbled under his command. He forbade them to prey on the scattered homes of other men, focusing their efforts only on the servants of Morgoth. This was a poor living, and their numbers dwindled. Then one day, they captured a strange creature. He was one of the last of the petty dwarves, a forgotten race, and his name was Mim. As his captors debated whether to kill him, Mim pleaded for his life, offering them a ransom they could not refuse. He would lead them to his secret home, a place of perfect safety, hidden from all eyes, be they orc, elf, or man. Túrin, against the counsel of his men, agreed. He saw not a treasure hoard but a fortress, a place to make a stand. Mim led them through secret paths to the high hill of Amon-Rud, the Bald Hill, and there, at its summit, hidden amongst the red saragon flowers that grew upon its stone crown, was the entrance to his halls. The caves of Baran Danwed, the House of Ransom. It was a natural fortress, a watchtower that looked out for leagues in all directions. For the first time since fleeing Doriath, Túrin had a home. He and his men were no longer hunted wanderers. They were a garrison. But Mizm was a bitter and secretive host. He shared his home, but not his heart, and he held a deep, ancient grudge against the elves. He had 2 sons, but one, he claimed, had been killed by an elf arrow, a seed of future tragedy, planted in the stone of their new home. It was to this hidden fortress that Beleg Cathalion finally came. He arrived in the dead of winter, a gray shadow against the snow, and brought with him 2 things that would change everything: the king's pardon and a gift. He told Túrin that King Thingol held no grudge, that he was welcome back in Doriath with his honor intact. This news, which should have been a relief, was instead a poisoned dart to Túrin's pride. He had suffered as an outcast, built a new life from nothing, all for a crime he had already been forgiven for. He saw it not as mercy, but as pity. He refused to return. "I am Niënor, the master of my own fate here," he declared. "I will not go back to be a petted fosterling in a gilded cage." The curse was tightening its grip, using Túrin's own pride to reject the very help that could save him. Then, Beleg presented his gift, a parcel of lembas, the sacred waybread of the elves, which could sustain a traveler for months. But Mim the dwarf, seeing the elven food, flew into a rage. He would not allow it in his home. This open hostility between Túrin's 2 companions, the old dwarf and the great elf, created a tension that filled the cold stone halls. A kingdom divided. Seeing he could not persuade his friend, Beleg made a choice. He would not abandon Túrin to his doom. He would return to Doriath to gather aid and weaponry, and then he would come back to Amon-Rud to fight alongside the man he considered his brother. And so Beleg left once more, leaving Túrin as the master of the Bald Hill, the so-called Lord of the House of Ransom. Túrin's fame grew. From Amon-Rud, his company, now known as the 2 Captains for Beleg, soon returned, waged a fearless war against Morgoth. They reclaimed a swath of land, and for a time it seemed that one man's defiance was holding back the shadow. Men flocked to their banner. Hope, for the first time in a long time, flickered in the west. But can a man cursed by the Dark Lord himself ever truly be a beacon of hope? Or does a brighter flame simply cast a darker shadow, one that is easier for the enemy to see from afar? This beacon of hope did not go unnoticed. From the black pits of Angband, the eye of the Dark Lord turned towards the Bald Hill, and the light that defied him. Morgoth's malice is patient. He does not always strike with fire and sword. Sometimes, he uses the poison that already exists in the hearts of the desperate. And so, orcs came for Mim the petty dwarf as he gathered roots in the wild. They did not kill him. Instead, they offered him a bargain for his life, and for the life of his remaining son. He had only to do what his bitter heart already longed to do: guide them to the hidden fortress, and betray the elf he so despised. The attack came at night, a silent, swarming tide of black figures. Mim had shown them the secret ways. The garrison was overwhelmed. Túrin, fighting like a demon in the light of the burning watchtowers, was at last ensnared and taken captive. The dragon helm was torn from his head, and he was dragged away in chains, a prize for the Dark Lord. Beleg was left for dead, bound to a tree, and used for target practice by the cruel orcs. But Beleg Cathalion's spirit was not so easily broken. He survived his wounds, and when he awoke among the dead, his grief was forged into a cold, unbreakable purpose. He would follow them. He would follow them to the gates of Angband itself if he must. His hunt led him into the terrifying forest of Tar nu Fuin, the forest under Nightshade, a place of dread and delusion. It was there, huddled in despair, that he found an escaped thrall of Morgoth, an elf named Gwyndor, once a lord of Nargothrond, now a broken, fearful creature. But seeing Beleg, and the great bow Belthronding, a spark of courage was rekindled in him. Together, they tracked the orcs to their camp. Under the cover of a great thunderstorm, they found them, drunk on victory and foul wine, sleeping around their fires. And in their midst, bound and unconscious, lay Túrin. Beleg, a shadow in the storm, crept towards his friend, carrying Anglahel, the black sword he had brought from Doriath. With infinite care, Beleg began to cut the cruel bonds that held Túrin's hands and feet. But the curse that lay upon Túrin was ever awake. As Beleg worked, the point of the black blade slipped, pricking Túrin's foot. Awakening suddenly to pain in the utter blackness, his mind still clouded by torment, Túrin saw only a dark shape leaning over him with a blade. Believing it to be an orc, come to torture him again, a strength born of fury and despair surged through him. He let out a great cry, and before Beleg could speak a single word, Túrin wrenched the sword from his grasp. He struck. He struck once, with all the might of his grief and rage, at the shadow he thought his enemy. A flash of lightning then split the sky, illuminating the scene in a ghastly, frozen moment. It showed him the face of his friend, his only friend, Beleg Cuthalion, falling back with the black sword buried in his heart. The truth crashed down upon Túrin, and the sound that tore from his throat was not of a man, but of a beast in its death agony. He did not move. He did not flee. He knelt in the mud and the blood and the ceaseless rain, staring at the face of the brother he had slain. The curse had found its mark. It had used his own hand, his own strength, his own love, to destroy him. This was the victory of Morgoth, not to kill his enemies, but to make them into monsters who destroy all that they hold dear. Túrin, son of Húrin, was now Túrin, slayer of his best friend. A new, darker chapter of his doom had just begun. The tale of Turambar is far from over. The curse will lead him to new lands, to new names, and to a fate more terrible than any could imagine. To follow the path of the Dragonhelm, and witness the full tragedy of the Children of Húrin, make sure you subscribe to the _Silmarillion_Chronicles. The darkness is just beginning to fall.